Hello and welcome to your next in your series of video lectures. Today we're going to talk about one of the P's of the marketing mix, and that's place. We're going to talk about how do you get a product from manufacturer all the way to the end user, the consumer. And that's what we call integrated marketing channels. Integrated marketing channels includes distributors, it includes wholesalers, retailers, direct from manufacturers, etc. For instance, I'm here on hole number 1 at Old Hickory. Take the golf ball I'm about ready to hit, for example. It was made in China and then transported across the ocean, probably landed someplace in California. From there, it went to a wholesaler, then it went to a retailer, and then I finally bought it. Now, if I bought it from a golf course, it went from a wholesaler to a distributor to a retailer, and then I bought it. And who knows? I'll probably just end up slicing this thing off into the woods on hole number 5 or putting it in the pond on hole number 7. But that's all right. So today we're going to talk about key concepts in value chain, in integrated marketing integrated marketing channels, and also in one of the 4 P's called place. So I'm up right now. Time for me to tee off and time for you to get started. So as I said in the introduction, today we're going to talk about all types of marketing channels, which is really one of the jobs of a marketing manager to make sure that they know where and how their product is going to get to the customer. So marketing channels are really a set of independent organizations participating in the process of making the product available to the consumer and getting the product to the consumer. Those are the key things about a marketing channel. Now, generally speaking, products can go through multiple channels, and we're going to talk about that in a few slides from now. Or generally speaking, the product can go through just one channel, which is direct from manufacturer to the consumer. However, one of the things that each channel intermediary needs to do is to add value. If they're not adding value, if they're not adding value to the product, if they're not adding value to the service, if they're not adding value to the customer, then they're not worth it. And there's no reason to have that channel. As you think through marketing distribution and distribution channels, one of the things that we've got to remember is the only reason to have a channel member is because they add value. Because every time you have a channel member, you're going to lose money, or it's going to cost you money. So if you've got a wholesaler that goes to a distributor, that goes to a retailer, the wholesaler and the distributor and the retailer all have to make money also. So therefore, the wholesaler, the distributor, the retailer, all those need to add value to a consumer, or there's no sense in having it. If really there's no value, then you might as well go from direct from manufacturer to the particular consumer. So the particular set of marketing channel a firm employs is their channel system. It's also their strategy. One of the key concepts in this chapter is a push versus a pull strategy. It has to do with where you're putting your money and how you set your advertising budgets. Let me give you an example. A push strategy means that you're going to push it into a distributor, and then the distributor is going to sell it to the consumer. A pull strategy is you're going to market directly to the consumer and have them go into a distributor and ask for that particular product. Let me give you an example. Suppose I had the best beer in the world. Actually, I do make my own beer. And I call it Densmore Pale Ale. So we'll use Densmore Pale Ale as our product for our push versus pull example. So I make Densmore Pale Ale. If I employed a push strategy, what I would do is I would have a sales force calling on distributors. The distributors then would buy my product, and the distributors would then sell it into the bars, and the restaurants and the bars and the restaurants would then offer it to my consumers. I would spend most of my advertising and most of my resources trying to sell it to the distributor. Then the distributor would sell it through for me. That's a push strategy. A pull strategy is I would advertise to the consumer, have them go into bars and restaurants, ask for Densmore Pale Ale. The bars and restaurants then would go to their distributor and say, we need Densmore Pale Ale because my customers are asking for it, and we'd sell it that way. So a pull strategy is the customer is pulling it through the distribution channels. The customer is asking the bars, then the bars are asking the distribution network for my product. That's a pull strategy. So what you're doing is you're advertising and you're putting most of your resources towards the consumer. A push strategy is you're putting most of your resources to the distributor and having them sell it through to the restaurants and bars and then having them offer it to their consumers. So that's the difference between a push versus a pull strategy. You need to understand that because that is one of the key concepts of any marketing manager. So now there's two types of channel intermediaries. There's agents and brokers and there's merchant wholesalers. The difference between the two, really the only difference between the two, is agents and brokers don't take title to the goods. They don't own the goods. What they do is they bring buyer and seller together. Merchant wholesalers, and that includes distributors and retailers and all those other things, take title to the goods. Let me give you an example. A stockbroker. Those of you that want to be a stockbroker one of these days. You don't buy the stock and then sell it to your client. What you do is your client comes and you bring the company and the client together and you just facilitate the sale. Same thing with real estate brokers. A real estate agent or a real estate broker doesn't buy the house first and then sell it to their customer. They bring the seller of the house and the buyer of the house together. Oftentimes, other high-end products are sold that way. For instance, most yachts. If you want to sell a yacht, you go through a broker. And the broker then goes and finds a person to buy that yacht. And they bring buyer and seller together. They facilitate the deal. Sometimes agents and brokers can not only facilitate the deal, but they can also do financing and other things like that. Other times, all they're doing is bringing buyers and sellers together. I don't know if any of you ever saw the movie Rain Man with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman, but if you did, Tom Cruise was a broker for high-end cars. He sold Ferraris and Lamborghinis and that type of thing, and all he was bringing buyers and sellers together. Merchant wholesalers would be like Dot Foods. It would be like Wegmans and Wegmans Distribution Center and those types of things. They actually buy the product and then they resell it. Generally speaking, agents and brokers take a commission. Merchant wholesalers mark the product up. Those are the difference between those two. You need to also understand that so that because that's a key concept in marketing too. So here's some marketing channels for consumers. Later on in the slides, we're going to do marketing channels for business to business, but this is B2C. The first one would be producers directly to the consumers. Best example of that would be a farm market or a farm stand would be a good one. Sometimes you have an apple orchard, like for instance, Schutz's cider mill. They're producing the cider and they're selling it right to the consumers. Sometimes cheeses, a lot of cheeses are being done that way where especially out in Wisconsin, a lot of cheese producers right there on the farm producing the cheese going right to the consumer. Then you have producer to retailer to consumer. Oftentimes that's produce too, where a farmer will sell the corn right to Wegmans. Wegmans will sell it to you. Cheeses. A farmer will sell a cheese, a high-end cheese to Wegmans. Wegmans will sell it to you. Juices, Welch's Juices. If you go I don't know if any of you guys ever go to Cleveland. I go there often because my parents live there. But if you go to Cleveland, if you go past Buffalo, start heading west past Buffalo, you see all of these grapes, acre after acre, thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of grapes. That's all a cooperative by Welch's. And those people will grow their grapes. They will crush their own grapes, make their own juices. Those juices sell right to the consumer. So they'll sell right to Wegmans. Most products that you see have producer to wholesaler to retailer to consumers. And that's just about everything in a grocery store. That's most of your clothings and everything else. So someone produces it. Let's take a box of macaroni and cheese. Kraft produces it. They sell it to a wholesaler. That wholesaler could be owned by Wegmans. Wegmans has its own wholesale network. Dot Foods is another wholesale network. Then it goes from that wholesale network, Dot Foods or Wegmans wholesale network, to retailers. In the case of Dot Foods, they sell to Sure Finds. They sell to independents, IGA, independent grocers, and that type of thing. Tops has their own wholesale market. So does Wegmans and most of your grocery stores. Then it goes to the retailers, and then it goes to consumers. And then finally, you've got producers, agents and brokers, wholesalers, retailers, and consumers. Best example I can think of would be a lot of your makeup products and a lot of your personal products like body washes, hair gels, and that type of things. DEP, D-E-P. I don't know if anybody ever uses DEP hair products. The only reason I know about this is because my buddy made a whole lot, I almost said a bad word there, a whole lot of money doing this. He was an agent for DEP. So DEP produced the product. This guy was an agent for DEP products, and he would call on wholesalers. He would call on Wegmans wholesalers. He would call on Walmart wholesalers. He would call on other wholesalers that sold into IGA. He would sell the products to those wholesalers. Those wholesalers then would buy it, sell it to their retailers, and then sell it to consumers. So this guy repped. He was an agent broker for DEP products, and he had about 4 other lines of hair care products. I think he had a line of makeup. I also think he had a line of skin creams and things like that. And he would rep those lines to wholesalers and then to retailers and then back to consumers. So on the very right, I know you can't see it because I'm in your way, but it goes producer, agents and brokers, wholesaler, retailer to consumer. So those are the ones that are most common. So as I said, multi-channel marketing is using more than one channel to reach a particular customer segment in a market area. For instance, let's take a look at Nike. Nike uses multiple channels in each market to reach the customer. They also use multiple companies within one channel. For instance, Nike will sell through Target, they sell through Dick's, they sell through just about any other sporting goods store, including Marshalls, and they'll sell through Walmart and all those types of things, all retail channel. Nike also sells direct, right from their own store, etc. We talked about Apple. Apple uses a multi-channel marketing. They sell directly right from Apple online. They can sell from their Apple retail store. They also sell from Apple, from Walmarts and other retail outlets out there. So most products use multiple channels to reach the customer. One of the things that they've got to do is maintain channel, what's the word? Integrity. That's the word. Maintain channel integrity. So if, let's say Apple's going to sell an iPhone direct from the Apple store, they've got to make sure that they're not selling it cheaper, even though it is selling, it's easier to sell it cheaper. They cannot sell it cheaper than, say, their Apple store or their retail store, like a Verizon store or a Walmart, because if they do, then Verizon and Walmart would stop carrying them. So they've got to maintain pricing integrity. It's amazing because I was going to go out and buy a set of Callaway golf clubs last year. I didn't buy them yet, but I'm still thinking about it. But I was going to buy a set of Callaway golf clubs. Callaway makes sure that it doesn't matter where you buy them. You can buy them online. You can buy them from your golf pro at your golf club that you go to. You can buy them from Dick's. You can buy it from Rock Bottom Golf online, what have you. No matter where you buy them, they're always exactly the same price. When I talked to their distributor, as he was at my club, and I was talking to their distributor, and he says, if we find anybody selling it lower, we'll cut them off. We won't allow them to sell it anymore. That's called maintaining pricing integrity within your channel. So the value channel network, as I said at the beginning of the lecture, and also as I said in the introduction, if a partner is not adding value, then there's no reason to have them. One of the big values that partners add would be demand chain planning, which means they're going to forecast the demand of their particular part of the value chain so that the manufacturer knows how much to manufacture and how much to make. So retailers will give a forecast. Wholesalers will give a forecast, and then that goes into manufacturers. So it's a lot easier for manufacturers to plan how much demand and how much they're going to make. And that's one of the values that channel members add to the value network. So the digital revolution, my goodness gracious, it's becoming increasingly popular and more popular. The digital revolution is here to stay. As a matter of fact, I see the digital revolution really taking a lot of the stores and making them go away. Look at what's happening to Sears. Sears is out of business. Kmart is almost out of business. Penny's is going out of business, and some of those department stores because of Amazon, because of Walmart, and some of those other digital, what I call click only, which is Amazon, and also brick and click, which would be Walmart and just about everybody else. So you can check online for products available in stores. I do that at Walmart, or I do that at other stores that I'm going to. I'll do that at a Target store. You can find it in store and then have it shipped to your house. The big thing right now in Kroger's a huge grocery chain in the Midwest. I used to buy from them when I lived in Columbus, Ohio. But Kroger is huge on ordering product online to pick up at store. And that's really, really convenient. I talk to a lot of people in the Midwest. My sister lives in the Midwest. My brother still lives in the Midwest over down towards the Columbus area. And I have friends that live there. And they say it's absolutely fantastic because at about 4 o'clock, I'm thinking, I don't have anything for supper tonight for the kids. So they can just hit Kroger stores. They can pick up a bag of groceries for supper tonight. They pull through. The groceries are ready. They hand them to them. They paid already online. They hand them the bag of groceries through a portal, through a little window, and away they go. So they don't have to stop and go to the store, but they can get food for supper that evening for their kids, and they think it's probably the most convenient thing going. Kroger's also set up very well for that. If you look at Kroger stores, you can enter the store from 3 sides of the building, and then one side is specific to where you pick it up with your car. So if you look at Wegmans, as a matter of fact, I was just at Wegmans. You always enter Wegmans from the front, right? You don't enter it from the back. The back's where the trucks go. You don't enter it from the side. Well, a Kroger store, you enter it from 3 sides of the building, and then one side of the building is only a drive-up lane. It's really, really, really convenient. So these are all the different things that you can do because of the digital revolution. It's really, really convenient for consumers. And Kroger's is just about, it's putting everybody else out of business in the Midwest from a grocery store perspective. So You got zero channel direct or zero channel intermediaries, that's direct. You got 1, 2, 3 multi-level intermediaries. We talked about that 2 slides ago. One of the key things here is really 2 things I want to point out with this slide. The first thing is reverse flow channels. Most people don't understand what that is. But a reverse flow channel is what we call end-of-life channels. For instance, take a look at a computer, right? Desktop computer. There's a lot of components within that desktop computer that can still be used and recycled. So reverse flow is taking end-of-life products, batteries, desktop computers, even plastics and things like that, and then having a channel go into for recyclability and recycling. And then finally, service sector channels are becoming very important, especially digital channels. The best example I can think of a service sector channel is airlines. I never go to the airline anymore. I never go, if I'm gonna fly someplace, I don't go to American and check their flights. I go through Travelocity, which has everybody's flight, and I use them as an intermediary because I can shop multiple flights at once. So service sector channels are just that. It's channels, and a lot of them are digital these days, but it's channels in order to buy something that is service related. You see Cleveland Clinic down there in the corner. There's a lot of different channels where you can go and you can get care, so you don't have to go to a hospital, you don't have to go to a clinic. As a matter of fact, we used to, in my principal's class, we used to do a case study on Minute Clinic, which are clinics found in, I think, CVS stores. Kroger, the grocer giant in the Midwest, they have clinics where they have doctors that are from different clinics like the Cleveland Clinic or university hospitals or something like that go in there and see patients. So you can't see this, so I'm gonna have to try to move me. Oh, wow, I can move me. Look, I'm moved right there. So we talked about the consumer marketing channels on the left. You know all about that. Jobber would be the same thing as an agent broker. These are your industrial marketing channels on your right. You can go right manufacturer to industrial customer. Oftentimes that happens. It can go from manufacturer to an industrial distributor to an industrial customer. Lots of your healthcare things like catheters and many, many healthcare products, as well as healthcare equipment like ultrasound machines, etc., go from manufacturer to industrial distributor. HMS is a huge healthcare distributor. And then you can go from manufacturer to manufacturer's representative to an industrial distributor. So a manufacturer's representative might be, and this, you can make a lot of money doing this, might be going from microscopes. Actually, I had a colleague in Columbus, not Columbus, but Cincinnati, Ohio, that repped a specific microscope, a very high-end microscope. And so the manufacturer, he repped it for the manufacturer, sold it into individual distributors, and then individuals sold those through. And then you also have your manufacturer to manufacturer sales branch. Sometimes then it goes into industrial distributors, or it can go right into the industrial customers. So those are your, what I would call your B2B different marketing channels. So on the left there, you have B2C, and on the right here, you have B2B. So channel design and channel decisions, really, these are some of the things that need to come into place. Like I said before, everything that in marketing starts with who. Who is your target market? Let me move this over just a little bit. Who is your target market, and what are your needs and wants of your target market? So take a look at, your lot size. Are you going to sell a lot of it, like macaroni and cheese? Waiting time and delivery time. Is it a custom order? Convenience, product variety, service. Who's going to provide the service? Who's going to provide the returns, etc. A lot of times when you buy something online from Best Buy, let's say. They say don't return that to Best Buy, return it right to the manufacturer. So a lot of times all of those comes into fruition and into play when you're going to talk about who's going to be your intermediary, how many intermediaries you're going to have, etc. So identifying major channel alternatives, your types of intermediary, your number of intermediary, all depends on your product. It also depends on who you're going to sell it to and who your target market is. The number of intermediaries, the only reason I'm going to go over this is because it's very important. Exclusive distribution means you have one distributor in a region. Hummer. Do they still make Hummers? At one point in time, I had a Hummer. Couldn't park the thing. It was too wide, man. You had to take up 2 parking spaces. So that means, you know, you had to park way, way, way out so you could take up 2 parking spaces. It was so wide. Really hated that vehicle. But that's a story for another day. That's exclusive distributor. There's only one Hummer dealer in town. Selective distribution would be like Alex and Ani. We talked about that in class the other day, about 3 classes ago, where it's only sold at certain stores, certain places. Not American Eagle, but Abercrombie and Fitch is selective distribution. And then intensive distribution, that would be Nike, that would be most of your products, which is sold just about everywhere where products are sold. So identifying alternatives, one of the things that we need to understand is, again, we need to make sure that the channel members, and I hate to say it, but stay in their lane. You know, they do what they're supposed to do, and they don't infringe on other channel members. They also don't try to undercut each channel members. If the channel becomes too fierce, and if competition within the channel becomes too fierce, people will not want to carry the product. So terms and responsibilities of channel members are absolutely key. For instance, oftentimes a manufacturer tries to set pricing policies, tries to set conditions for sale as far as terms like net 30, etc. Provide territories for distributors and mutual services and responsibilities. I know for Budweiser, if you want to distribute Budweiser, you have to buy in to get the license, and then you've really got to manage to the way Budweiser's terms and conditions are, so that the channel members aren't out there trying to undercut each other, so that there is some type of margin of integrity out there. So some channel management decisions. Who's going to train the channel members? Do they need training? How do you select them? Are they going to be global? Are they going to be regional, or what have you? For instance, with Budweiser, they are a global company, but they set up only regional distribution. And it might be 3 or 4 counties. It might be 1 county, depending on how big it is. For instance, if you're in New York City, you might only have 1 borough, whereas if you're here in Rochester, you might have 5 counties. You got to modify it to see how it's working. You got to evaluate to channel members to make sure that they're selling through the way you want them to sell through and doing what you want to do. And then again, you've got other things like pricing considerations, etc. If you're going to give discounts to your channel members to try to have them sell your products through, you got to give discounts to all of them. So lots and lots of considerations to take a look at as you're making your decisions. Conventional marketing channels, we talked about most of this lecture. Vertical marketing systems are those systems where they own, not only do they own the product, but they own the value chain coming through. For instance, Wegmans. Wegmans has their own products, which they get from a manufacturer, so they have their own products. So Wegmans macaroni and cheese. They also own the wholesaler, they own the retailer. So they own the product, they own the wholesaler, and they own the retailer. Oftentimes you see products that'll do that. Apple owns the product, they also own the retail store, and then they own the wholesaler also sometimes. So those are vertical marketing systems. Horizontal marketing systems is where two companies that do different things but are related come together to make it better. The best example I can think of for that is Verizon stores selling Apple phones. Verizon is a service provider. Apple is a hardware provider. However, those two are horizontal, yet they come together and they make it better for everybody else from a distribution standpoint. So Apple is sold through Verizon, as well as Samsung and LG and the rest of those phones. So that would be a horizontal marketing system. There's other horizontal marketing systems that I don't know about. Oftentimes you see horizontal marketing systems where two people that are unrelated, yet they are on the, they kind of help one another come together. Vertical marketing systems is when someone owns all of the channel all the way through. If you take a look, I gave you a story about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I gave you a story about paper. And when I was managing paper for vice president of Xerox Corporation, if you look at Georgia Pacific, they own the trees, they own the slurry, they own the paper manufacturing, they own the slitting, and they own the brand or the product. So if you look, they are very vertically integrated in their marketing systems. That's why I know that Georgia Pacific does a good job with regarding to harvesting those trees, because they own the forests. They've got to replenish what they take. E-commerce and M-commerce is huge. M-commerce is even bigger than e-commerce. E-commerce is using computers, etc. And a lot of people do that. But really, consumers are now going to M-commerce. There's different apps. Amazon has an absolutely fantastic app. Dunkin' has a fantastic app. A lot of people, and so does Starbucks. And you guys just did a case on Starbucks a couple of weeks ago. Have M-commerce apps, so it's easy. My daughter absolutely loves Dunkin', and so she's got the app. On our way to someplace, she'll say what you want from Dunkin'. She'll do the app. We'll just pull through and away it goes. So Amazon has that. So that's M-commerce becoming more and more common, especially for you millennials. Channel conflict is just that. We talked about channel conflict. Channel conflict is one channel is fighting with another. Oftentimes you see very strict terms and conditions and ways of doing business amongst channel members so that there isn't channel conflict out there. It's very, very difficult to manage all the members across all the different channels, but manufacturers try to do that to ensure pricing integrity, ensure pricing or terms and conditions integrity, etc. amongst the channels. And then, of course, you've got channel coordination. When channel members are brought together, oftentimes there are meetings, and you bring in all your distributors and have your distributors talk amongst one another, share best practices, coordinate amongst one another in order to make them better and also sell the products better. And you see a lot of huge manufacturers bring together all of their channels members together in order to share best practices and make them better, provide them training so that they not only sell more, but they also sell the manufacturer's product better. Types of channel conflict is horizontal channel conflict, and that's when let's say Target and Walmart are fighting over the same product. Vertical channel conflict is when one person is taking more than should be or not doing what they're saying they're doing. And then, of course, multi-channel conflict, and that comes from distribution channels, from digital channels to brick channels, brick and click channels, and all those types when they're conflicting. So cause of channel conflict usually is goal incompatibility. Someone wants to make more money than the other, or someone says, listen, I can take a lower margin and I'll sell more. unclear rights. And that's why Budweiser is extremely clear about what a distributor can and cannot do. And if you don't adhere to what they're doing, they will pull it. Differences in perception, who's doing what, who's supposed to do what. And then finally, dependence on the manufacturer. The more dependence the intermediary has on the manufacturer, the more they're going to adhere to their rules. The less dependence, the less they're going to adhere to their rules. That's why you see products, Nike products, being sold a lot less, say at not Target, but at off-brand discounters like Marshall's, TJ Maxx, than you see it at, say, Dick's. Then finally, there's cannibalization, where you're diluting and you're cannibalizing your market. If you're over-distributed, all you're doing is driving pricing down. You drive prices down, nobody wins. So channel members and manufacturers are very often very careful not to dilute their brands through inappropriate channels. Then the other thing is legal and ethical issues in channel relations. And I want to talk about something called the gray market. We all know the black market. The black market is selling something illegal. Gray market is a key term when we're talking about channel and channel conflict and cooperation. The gray market is when you have a distributor who's unauthorized. Either that person is unauthorized to sell in a particular territory or unauthorized to sell. I know that's really weird, but let me give you an example. I'll give you two examples. When I worked at Bausch & Lomb, when I was a wee lad, we had a distributor that was out of Miami. That distributor was supposed to handle all of our Latin American territories, Mexico, and all through Latin America. So because the PPP, for all of you that took international business, and for those of you that took it with me, you understand what PPP is, but because purchasing power parity, obviously you've got to sell a product at a less cost in Mexico than you do in the United States, just because they make, their middle class makes less money. So for instance, if you sold a contact lens for $15, you couldn't sell it for $15 or no one would ever buy a contact lens. So you had to sell it for, say, $7. I'm just making something up. So what would sell for $15 here in the United States to doctors would sell to doctors for $7 in Mexico. So we would take these contact lenses and we'd sell them to this distributor for approximately $4 or $5 so that that distributor could make money to sell into Mexico. What he did was, instead of selling them to Mexico, he turned around and sold them back into the United States, and he undercut all of our distributors in the United States. It was called the gray market. He was unauthorized to sell in the United States, yet he did anyways. So he sold those into the United States and really undercut all of our distributors because he could get them cheaper because he was supposed to sell them into Mexico. That was a real problem. Another gray market would be, let's say someone buys a huge shipment of, I'll tell you, a huge shipment of, say, a custom Brewcrafters beer. Custom Brewcrafters being out of Honeoye Falls there. Buys a huge shipment of custom Brewcrafters beer and then takes that and sells it into retail channels, or sells it into their store, and they're not authorized to do that. They don't have a distributorship, and they're not authorized to do that. That would be gray market. It's not black market. They're authorized to sell beer. They're just not authorized to sell that particular brand. So that's the gray market. So that happens with conflict and competition also. So that will conclude our video lecture for today. As usual, write a memo, 1.5 to 2 pages, outlining key concepts within this particular lecture. Hand it in to me on Monday, and I am looking forward to seeing you on said Monday. Take care and see you then.